Sabretooth is easily one of the most powerful supervillains in the X-Men universe, and this long-standing antagonist for Wolverine has troubled him in various incarnations for decades. There have been several versions of the character over time, and this fascinating villain has continued to change and morph across multiple story arcs. In this video, we'll take you through the entire life of Sabretooth and try to cover all his exploits from the comic books, animated shows, and live-action movies. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Exploring the extensive comic book origins and story arcs. It might be a tad bit amusing to know that a villain as important as Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth, who's almost immediately associated with Wolverine in the X-Men, was actually created as a recurring villain for Iron Fist back in 1977. He was only introduced into the X-Men universe during the Mutant Massacre crossover event, and since then there was no looking back for this character. While there are multiple versions of his origins, the exact backstory doesn't really have a credible account. This is because his memories have been altered and manipulated in the Weapon X program, and some other situations, and what he remembers as his past is not necessarily true. That being said, most comic book readers align with the narrative which suggests that Sabretooth grew up with an abusive father and showed signs of extreme violence very early in his life. One of his earlier life stories in the comic books revealed that he'd killed his doctor when he was only 9 years old, and various acts of violence were entertaining for him. How it went from working with Wolverine to working against him, because he became Wolverine's sworn enemy. There was a time when the two worked together for Team X, a covert ops unit run by the CIA, where David North, aka Maverick, and John Wraith, aka Kestrel, were also a part of the group. Some versions even go so far as to establish Sabretooth and Wolverine as half-brothers, who started their journey together before the ties between them worsened. While working for Team X, Sabretooth started showing his psychopathic tendencies and indulged in killing frenzies more than what was required. During this time period, he also fathered a son named Graydon with Mystique, who was posing as a spy, and with time, his killing of innocents didn't go down well with all his teammates, especially Wolverine. Eventually, Wolverine left the group, and since then, Sabretooth has been shown as his mortal enemy, the nemesis who keeps haunting him from time to time. Sabretooth's son goes on to become a notorious mutant hater who even formed a group called Friends of Humanity, specifically for this purpose. He was also running for president, but Mystique from an alternate future assassinated him, thus causing a lot of chaos and a spike in the anti-mutant emotions among the public. Following the assassination, Sabretooth was recruited by the Weapon X program, and it's believed that during his time under this program, Sabretooth underwent certain enhancements that bolstered his powers and feral nature further. How did Sabretooth become a ruthless mutant? Sabretooth has changed allegiances quite often, going from working for the likes of Magneto, Mr. Sinister, and even for Professor Xavier on a few occasions. His nature has always been like a self-motivated mercenary, who would do anything to pursue his murderous tendencies. It's been the same since his days at Team X. Later, he was recruited by Gambit for Mr. Sinister, who was forming the Marauders, a group of deadly mutants to be a part of the Mutant Massacre. In order to ensure utmost loyalty from his forces, even if they were killed, Mr. Sinister created clones of everyone. But Sabretooth could not be cloned. After working briefly for the Marauders, Sabretooth went back to his mercenary roots, and during this time he took on some popular superheroes like Ms. Marvel, Thor, Spider-Man, Daredevil, and many others. His strength was further enhanced by the ninja organization called the Hand, and in this particular story arc he has a memorable face-off against Caliban, who was one of the surviving Morlocks that had been slaughtered by Sabretooth. The feral mutant is fatally injured in this fight, but even his broken spine heals because of his remarkable healing ability. The final outcome of this duel was never revealed because Sabretooth never went after Caliban to settle the scores. He was briefly united with Wolverine when they both got back for another stint with Team X, but even this reunion was short-lived. During this time, Wolverine found out that his girlfriend Silver Fox, whom he'd assumed to be dead, was still alive, but she only remembered her hate for Logan and not the details of their relationship. A telepathic mutant then took control of Sabretooth and made him kill Silver Fox, ensuring decades of bitter rivalry with Wolverine going ahead. How did Sabretooth work with the X-Men and for the government? The very proposition of Sabretooth actually working alongside the X-Men seems rather unbelievable. It did happen during one of the more interesting comic book story arcs. An ancient telepath found out that Creed's psychosis stemmed from his time with the CIA, and Sabretooth attacked Professor Xavier. The latter infiltrated his mind to discover that he has a vivid memory of each one of his victims. This led Xavier into thinking that Sabretooth wasn't entirely a lost cause. Somewhere deep down, he still had some compassion for human lives and felt regret for his actions. He was forced to stay with the X-Men, and he was also a part of several battles during this time against the likes of Executioner and the Phalanx. He also fought Caliban one more time when he kidnapped Jubilee, and this time Sabretooth had the upper hand in the battle before Caliban fled. However, during a violent confrontation with Wolverine, he stabbed his claws into Sabretooth's brain, and this ultimately turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as he became resistant to psychic attacks. When he finally went rogue once again, Psylocke was unable to use telepathic attacks on him, and the X-Men together managed to bring him down. He was then sent to Dr. Valerie Cooper, who fitted an explosive restraining collar on him to force his obedience. Sabretooth had to participate as a part of the government-sponsored X-Factor team, and he helped in several missions to save his life. However, in a shocking twist, Sabretooth later revealed that he was a part of the X-Factor group with the sole agenda of killing any member that the government could no longer control. This life of servitude didn't last long for the feral mutant, and he soon returned to his mercenary ways. The infusion of adamantium to their bones and claws had always played a crucial part in shaping the abilities of both Sabretooth and Wolverine. It all started when Sabretooth gained an adamantium skeleton and claws briefly, and was tasked by Apocalypse to fight Wolverine in an ultimate showdown, which would make him the Horseman of Apocalypse, Death. However, when Wolverine won the fight, Sabretooth's adamantium was taken and bonded to Wolverine. After this crushing defeat, Sabretooth joined the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants formed by Mystique, and he was actively a part of the plan to assassinate Senator Robert Kelly. Later, he rejoined the Weapon X program once again, and this time around, he was genetically augmented and given a better healing factor, along with the gift of adamantium laced with his claws and bones. After quitting the program, Sabretooth had a memorable encounter with the new Wendigo in Canada. After a fierce battle, where they're both assumed dead, Sabretooth emerged as the winner. Sabretooth's stint with the superhuman group, the Children. After a failed attempt to attack the Xavier Institute, Wolverine nearly killed Sabretooth, but he managed to survive because of the current leader of the Brotherhood, Black Tom Cassidy. Following this, the next story arc explored how Sabretooth was running from a group of superhumans called the Children. Two members of this group, Songa and Serafina, were tracking him down, and later two others also attacked him and neutralized his healing abilities temporarily. His only way to survive was to head to the Xavier Institute for some attention, and Rogue injected him with nano-sentinels in order to make him capable enough for fighting against the Children. Of course, once he was back to normal after being healed, he abandoned the X-Men, although this time around, Cable taught him a lesson by throwing him into the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Sabretooth also experienced one of his most brutal encounters with Wolverine during this time. Reminded of the time when Sabretooth killed Silver Fox, Wolverine went berserk and they both wounded each other severely. When Wolverine regained consciousness, he found himself chained to the Blackbird, with Sabretooth piloting it. After attacking the feral mutant again, the jet crashed and the two were interrupted by the Queen of Wakanda, Storm. Sabretooth was taken to Wakanda as a prisoner, but he escaped into the forests, and when Black Panther chased him there, he nearly killed the Panther before Wolverine intervened. He managed to chop off Sabretooth's right hand, but with his healing abilities, this was always going to have a temporary effect on him. Sabretooth's death and his journey through hell. Sabretooth never really came across as a very intelligent mutant, but his mental prowess was further handicapped when a mysterious being called Romulus diminished his thinking abilities. He was reduced to an animalistic creature with no ability to reason, and in this state he was attacked by Wolverine, who was now armed with the Muramasa blade. This special sword was forged with a part of his soul, and it had the power to negate the accelerated healing abilities of the opponent. After Sabretooth was cornered, he briefly managed to overpower the spell of Romulus and pleaded with Wolverine to kill him. The latter readily obliged and decapitated him with the special sword. Sabretooth remained dead for a while, and Wolverine later encountered him during his descent into hell. He was attacked by Sabretooth, who obeyed the Devil's commands, but when Wolverine subdued the Devil, he ordered Sabretooth to let Wolverine go. Back to life and causing trouble in Japan. During the events of Wolverine number 300, Sabretooth was shown to be back from the dead, although how it happened wasn't revealed. He was stirring trouble between rival gangs in Japan, and even trying to kill the leader of the Yakuza. He encounters Wolverine soon enough, and during their battle, they come across Wolverine's adopted daughter. The story arc went on to reveal that Sabretooth was working for Mystique the whole time, and he withstood the vicious attacks from Wolverine, who was desperate to save his daughter. The man who had hired Sabretooth to cause a rift between rival gangs in Japan was seeking to become the ruler, but Sabretooth had plans of his own. He orchestrated the killing of the man who hired him and went on to become the new invisible leader of East Asia, along with Lord Deathstrike and Mystique. Another version of Sabretooth coming back to life. His exploits in Japan also brought him back from the dead, but the story arc seemed to be unrelated to the previous events where he was killed by Wolverine with a special sword. In this particular story arc, Sabretooth reappeared in the scene, much to the bewilderment of Wolverine. He was first informed about Sabretooth's comeback by Cloak after he saved him from being tied to the top of the Empire State Building. Wolverine went back to the place where he'd buried Sabretooth and even looked into the Weapon X facility in Canada, only to find an entire army of Sabretooth lookalikes in stasis tubes. He was suddenly attacked by Sabretooth, but the feral mutant escaped while Wolverine was busy fighting his replicas. Finally, Wolverine teamed up with Remus, the sister of Romulus, to bring down Sabretooth while he was guarding Romulus. Again, during the Uncanny X-Force story arc, Sabretooth and Blob kidnapped Genesis, leading to another confrontation with the X-Men. He even manipulated Wolverine's son Daken, leading to a situation where Wolverine had to kill his own son after the Uncanny X-Force defeated Sabretooth. When Sabretooth revealed how he planned the entire situation and forced Wolverine to kill his son, Genesis almost killed him until an interruption by Wolverine allowed him to escape. Later, Sabretooth joined Mystique in a sinister plan to take over the city of Madripoor after a flurry of successful bank robberies that they executed. The plan involved Sabretooth staging his arrest so that they could gain access to Lady Mastermind, who was a prisoner, and break her out. Mystique and Sabretooth had to back out after Wolverine got involved. Plans of domination of Madripoor were still active when Sabretooth became a part of the Avengers. This miraculous association took place during the events of Axis, when Magneto recruited Sabretooth to fight the Red Skull and the Sentinels. Even though both Sabretooth and Mystique were reluctant to help, they eventually agreed because Magneto told them about the threat that Red Skull posed to Madripoor, which they were in charge of by now. An inversion wave was caused by Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, and Doctor Doom, which brought about a change in Sabretooth. He now felt remorse for his past actions. He even wore one of Wolverine's outfits while fighting alongside the heroes. When this was all over, Sabretooth retained his conscience and readily surrendered to the authorities. The Avengers took note of his drastic change and he was drafted in to join the Avengers Unity Squad, which faced off against the High Evolutionary and Ultron. However, even though his new avatar was appreciated by his teammates, they weren't naive enough to trust him blindly and he put on a leash. Eventually, he was kicked out of the Avengers Mansion for some reason, and this was one of the rare moments when the readers actually felt bad for Sabretooth. Sabretooth became a part of Magneto's X-Men. Ironically enough, when Sabretooth first became a part of Magneto's new X-Men, he was still in good-natured ways. He didn't approve of Magneto's methods, and the only reason he agreed to be a part of the group was because no one else would have him. During his stint with Magneto's team, he developed a close relationship with Monet, and when Monet was cursed with mutant vampirism, he even allowed her to feed on him. But this took a toll on his powers, and his old feral nature returned with time. Magneto's team was disbanded soon, but Sabretooth was stuck in a conflicted position where he pondered over how he was losing his converted state to his old self. The Weapon X story arc brought out one of the most interesting story arcs featuring Sabretooth after he was recruited by Old Man Logan to fight the Weapon X program. Along with Domino, Lady Deathstrike, and Warpath, they formed a new team that worked together, and they managed to shut down the program led by William Stryker. However, the unity of the team was challenged because Warpath could never trust Sabretooth, and Logan's health was steadily deteriorating. He gave the leadership to Sabretooth, and his new mission involved taking out Omega Red. But Sabretooth was keen on giving Omega Red a chance, just like he'd gotten one previously, and even helped him get his revenge on his evil brother and his corrupt government, Sickle. They successfully defeated Omega Red's brother and replaced the leadership of Sickle, and after being convinced that the new version of Sabretooth is truly a changed man, Warpath and an ailing Logan take their leave. Their next mission was to rescue Monet St. Croix, and they successfully bring her out of Mentalo's cult. Sabretooth bribed Deadpool to side with him. They soon discovered that the cult was actually being led by a cyborg William Stryker. After a lot of struggle, they did manage to kill Stryker, but he had a deal with the devil and promised to be back. Sabretooth and the rest of the team went to Azazel for some assistance in continuing their fight to Hell, and jealous of Sabretooth's relationship with Mystique, Azazel decapitated him and sent him back to Hell one more time. The rest of his team also followed him to Hell, and when Sabretooth found Graydon in there, he wasn't ready to leave him behind. Their mission in Hell was interrupted after they learned that Mentalo was about to resurrect Stryker, and the team returned to Azazel to stop Mentalo before it was too late. Sabretooth was shot by Mentalo, and he re-entered Hell, but this time he successfully decapitated Stryker. He then sacrificed himself for his son Graydon, and watched happily as Graydon took his place in the living world. This also took a toll on Sabretooth's mind. He was back in his feral state. After realizing that he wasn't mentally fit enough to be tortured in Hell, he was sent back into the world as well. Sabretooth's life in the mutant land, Krakoa. In another interesting comic book story arc, all the mutants started residing on a land named Krakoa, where they had their own nation and own rules. While Sabretooth still functioned with Mystique in the Brotherhood, he committed a crime during one of his missions in the human world. He was put on trial after being brought back to Krakoa, and he was seen being dragged beneath the surface to be put in a permanent state of restraint while being in a conscious stasis. Later, when it was judged that Sabretooth had been punished too harshly, he could no longer be freed. However, he was granted a fantasy world in his dreams until his sentence completed. This was interrupted when other mutant prisoners interrupted his mind, and he eventually stole a boat to escape Krakoa after finally being released. exploring some alternate versions of Sabretooth from the comics. There have been quite a few alternate realities and varied timelines where we got to witness different versions of the deadly feral mutant. In the Age of Apocalypse reality, for instance, he was much less aggressive and had a lot more concern for humanity than usual. He'd quit working for Apocalypse after learning that his final motive was the downfall of the human race, and he even joined the X-Men to prevent this from happening. In sharp contrast, Sabretooth was more monstrous and crueler in the Ultimate Universe in Earth 1610. Here, he believed that mutants had to be crueler than men, and he was a part of Weapon X, which served as a Black Ops section of S.H.I.E.L.D. He had some memorable duels with Wolverine in this story arc. Again, in the Mutant X version, he didn't go by the name Sabretooth at all and was called Logan Creed. He was a member of the wild mutants known as the Pack, and he was programmed by Weapon X alongside Wolverine and Wildchild. He was eventually killed by Wolverine, who chopped his head off with his claws in this story arc. House of M in Earth 58163 is perhaps one of Sabretooth's most interesting alternate versions, and he served Magneto in this narrative. He was directly responsible for killing Senator Kelly, which led to a brutal mutant-human war. Following this event, he lost control of himself, and this was perhaps one of his most aggressive versions ever. He was finally taken down by Wolverine and his men, but after a brief imprisonment, Sabretooth was free to work for Magneto as his personal assassin. He tested troubled waters after he challenged Black Panther in Wakanda during one of his missions, and the latter decapitated him and brought back his severed head to Magneto. The Zombie Universe story arc is also quite intriguing, where you can see Sabretooth infected by a virus that causes several Marvel heroes to turn into zombies. He became one of the zombies and attacked Galactus, but Sabretooth died in the battle. There are some other lesser-known alternate versions, but Sabretooth's role there is rather limited. Do let us know in the comments below which one of his alternate versions you like the best. He had a significant role to play in the animated shows that followed his popularity from the comic books, and in the next segment we'll take you through Sabretooth's entire animated universe journey. X-Men, the animated series. This version of Sabretooth is known as Graydon Creed Sr., and he appears as one of the recurring villains in the show. He also serves as a reluctant ally of Wolverine on a few occasions, and his first major appearance can be seen in the episode Night of the Sentinels, Part 1. The episode is primarily focused on how young Jubilee is slowly discovering her mutant nature, and how she struggles with the reaction from her loved ones to her identity. The episode starts off with a glimpse of just how brutal and powerful Sabretooth can be. He's shown unleashing violence in the downtown area, where he throws people around like dolls and even lifts a police car above his head before flinging it into the air. The event is being reported in the news, where the reporter suggests how it can spark anti-mutant hysteria. Elsewhere, while watching the news, Jubilee's adoptive father tells his wife that he's informed the Mutant Control Agency about Jubilee and her mutant nature. Sabretooth next appears in the episode Enter Magneto, where Beast is on trial for breaking in and causing violence at the Mutant Control Agency. When Magneto tries to break him out of prison, Beast refuses the offer and suggests that he wants a fair trial to prove to the humans that mutants aren't a threat for them. However, the proceedings at the court don't seem to go Beast's way, and a biased judge denies his bail charges. Sabretooth makes a sudden entry just as the court proceedings end for the day. He fights off the guards who try to stop him. He demands that Beast should be released, but a few of the guards fire at Sabretooth, prompting a reactionary response from Scott, who fights back at the guards despite Logan's reluctance in saving Sabretooth. While an anxious Xavier tries tracing his former friend Magneto, an injured Sabretooth is later seen in a hospital bed. Cyclops explains to Xavier how Sabretooth went berserk after Beast was denied bail. Meanwhile, Wolverine attempts to sever the cables attached to Sabretooth, but Cyclops arrives to stop him from doing any further damage. Wolverine points out to everyone how the crazy mutant Sabretooth is going to be a threat, but the others, including Xavier, disregard this as his personal vendetta. They all head out to deal with Magneto's threat after he's spotted, and the rest of the episode takes the limelight away from Sabretooth and Wolverine's rivalry. Sabretooth's next major appearance is in the episode Deadly Reunions, which starts off with Professor Xavier concerned about the torment to Sabretooth's psyche. After evaluation, he finds that the mutant has been betrayed by his friends and hated by humanity, going through a very difficult life. After establishing a psychic link with him, Xavier tries to make sense of Sabretooth's inner demons in an effort to help him out. However, Sabretooth seems to be hiding something from him and resists all the efforts. Later, during a verbal confrontation with Wolverine, Sabretooth reveals to his team how they used to work together once upon a time. Xavier wants Wolverine's assistance in healing Sabretooth slowly, but Wolverine is too rigid in his head about how dangerous the feral mutant can can be. As the X-Men are engaged in a fierce fight with Magneto, Sabretooth is left unguarded, and we soon see the consequences. Jubilee is left alone with him, and after tricking her into releasing him, he almost ends up killing her. He reveals that Magneto had sent him after pre-planning and anticipating all the actions from the X-Men and passion from Xavier. Luckily, Wolverine wasn't too far away. He springs into action as the two powerful mutants clash. After a fierce fight between the two, Sabretooth manages to run away after being blasted out of the room by Jubilee's intervention. As Xavier tends to an injured Logan, he realizes that his compassion is often misplaced, and the likes of Sabretooth need to be treated as the threat that they pose. In the episode Cold Vengeance, Wolverine takes a break and heads to the Arctic for some inner peace. He left without informing anyone, and some members of the X-Men aren't too happy about his sudden disappearance. However, Wolverine is unaware that his old nemesis Sabretooth is tracking him patiently, waiting to finish him off at the first opportunity. Sabretooth triggers an explosion and attacks an unsuspecting Wolverine as the two engage in a fight. During the violent encounter, Wolverine falls from a cliff and Sabretooth assumes that he'll be dead after falling into the icy waters below. But a group of villagers find Logan in the cold and tend to him as Sabretooth watches in frustration from a distance. Logan heals quickly, much to the surprise of the villagers, but the threat of Sabretooth still looms large. He confronts one of the men who helped Wolverine and forces him to assist him in taking down Wolverine for good this time around. He lures Wolverine away as Sabretooth massacres the fishing village, and now Wolverine is seething in rage to teach his old friend a lesson. When they clash once again, it almost ends similarly for Wolverine after he's hanging onto a ledge. Sabretooth is about to push him down when the villager tackles him from behind and buys Wolverine some time. This time around, Sabretooth is the one to fall through the ledge, and the men from the village term Wolverine their friend and savior, much to the satisfaction of his troubled soul. The episode Bloodlines in Season 4 reveals that Graydon Creed Jr., the founder and former leader of the Friends of Humanity, is the son of Sabretooth and Mystique. The episode ends with him being taken to Sabretooth to be punished for some sloppy mistakes in an important mission. Later, in the episode titled Weapon X, Lies and Videotape, the proceedings start off with Wolverine dreaming about a time when he and Silver Fox were attacked by Sabretooth. He wakes up visibly disturbed, and he leaves in haste for an abandoned Weapon X facility. On reaching there, Wolverine has further flashbacks, and he's surprised to find that Sabretooth is also there. Someone had summoned him with a letter and coordinates to this place. Both Wolverine and Sabretooth realize that their memories have been tampered with in the Weapon X program, and now they can't be sure of whether the things that they remember about their past are true or manipulated. Eventually, they find out that a robot named Talos has been unleashed to have them killed, but the plan doesn't work and it's destroyed. However, they learn that more such robots will keep coming for them in the future, because one simply can't run away from the Weapon X program without consequences. Another minor but crucial appearance of Sabretooth can be found in the episode titled Promise of Apocalypse, where Apocalypse begins a mission of kidnapping the major psychics of the world. He sends Sabretooth and Mystique to capture Psylocke, but the likes of Wolverine and Shard are there to stop them. A vicious fight breaks out, and Magneto arrives to get the job done. His last major appearance in X-Men the Animated Series is in the first episode of the 5th season, titled The Phalanx Covenant. The episode opens with a rampaging Sabretooth destroying New York until Jubilee and Beast manage to overpower him. They bring him back to the mansion, but when Wolverine finds out about the capture, he arrives to investigate, only to learn that this isn't actually Sabretooth. The story then takes a different turn with a deadly alien invasion and the exploits of a unique species, but Sabretooth's illusionary presence in the beginning does make it memorable. X-Men Evolution. Sabretooth has quite a few appearances in the animated series X-Men Evolution, and the first one is in the very first episode titled Strategy X. He has a rather limited appearance in this episode, where he can be seen observing Logan from a distance as he heads off on his motorcycle. In the episode X Impulse, the focus is largely on Kitty Pryde and her struggle with her newly discovered mutant abilities. However, Sabretooth does make a dramatic appearance when he rolls up in a motorcycle to greet Logan. They both catch each other's scent before actually finding each other, and when Nightcrawler and Cyclops find Wolverine storming off in a foul mood, they decide to follow him. Finally, the two heavyweights clash, and when Sabretooth pins down Wolverine against a wall with a car, Cyclops and Nightcrawler come to his rescue. When he realizes that he's been cornered and outnumbered, Sabretooth escapes, much to Wolverine's disappointment. He can next be seen in the 8th episode of Season 1 titled Spike Cam. The story starts off with Evan, aka Spike, looking to recover from his bad credits by doing well on his new assignment, documenting his life events with a digicam. However, he's completely unaware of how Sabretooth is tracking him, and the latter manages to find the location of his school using his digicam. The next morning, Sabretooth barges in through the school gates, but the X-Men are there together and they manage to push him out of the premises. Wolverine's not the one to give up so easily, and chases after Sabretooth through the woods. Later, he comes up with a clever plan of using Spike, Kitty Pryde, and Rogue as bait to lure out Sabretooth. But the beastly mutant is quicker to get to the trio, and they stand little chance against his brutish strength. Wolverine arrives just in time, and he knocks him unconscious. Sabretooth is then dropped in the snow in the Alaska region, and Xavier wipes out his memories. Maybe this would mean a temporary break from the dangers posed by him. Sabretooth next appears sooner than the fans expected in the episode Reminder, which looks into Wolverine's troubled past. His tortured origins are out there to haunt him again, and there are scores to settle for him as he encounters the Weapon X program yet again. This is where he was given his adamantium skeleton, and his quest to set things right run into trouble when he finds Sabretooth up against him once again. Sabretooth is working with the scientist who was responsible for the adamantium skeleton of Wolverine, and he now wants to use him further as a dreaded mutant slayer. A microchip was installed in his brain a long time ago, and Wolverine must get it removed in time before he loses his mind. Luckily for him, he has some good support from Nightcrawler and Shadowcat to stand up against the attacks from Sabretooth and the evil plans of the scientist. The Cauldron 1 is another episode with an interesting cameo featuring Sabretooth. During an argument between Magneto and Xavier on board the Blackbird, the former manages to throw Wolverine off the jet and he lands into the ocean underneath. When he swims to a nearby island, Sabretooth is waiting to greet him with a ferocious fight. The episode ends with Xavier being given the choice of joining Magneto willingly, or he could live in stasis tubes like Rogue, Jean, and Storm, who had to be forced. Meanwhile, Wolverine and Sabretooth are shown engaged in their fierce encounter, with no decisive winner yet. In the next episode, The Cauldron 2, we see how Xavier is able to send a warning to Wolverine just before Magneto is about to put him into stasis. Wolverine manages to outsmart Sabretooth and grabs onto a helicopter to leave the fight for the time being. Later in the episode, Sabretooth is passed through a genetic enhancer that uses the Cyttorak stone, and he emerges bigger, stronger, and more feral than before. His next duel with Wolverine doesn't go well for the latter, who gets beaten to a pulp. Eventually, it takes some special efforts from Storm, who uses a cyclone to smash Sabretooth against a wall and then bury him in debris. If he wasn't contained, this fight could have been quite disastrous for Wolverine, who was overpowered in every department. In Day of Reckoning 2 in Season 2, Sabretooth has a brief appearance when he attacks Beast, and the two engage in a nail-biting contest. Finally, Magneto breaks up the fight by trapping Beast in a girder, and later, Sabretooth uses this advantage to knock him out. Just as he's about to drop a dumpster on Beast, Rogue steps in and attacks Sabretooth after absorbing Beast's powers. She manages to knock him down. He doesn't have much of a role to play for the rest of the episode. His next notable appearance is in the Season 3 episode titled Under Lock and Key. In this story arc, both the Acolytes and the X-Men find themselves fighting a strange spider-like entity which is super powerful and almost unstoppable. Sabretooth appears along with Colossus and Pyro as they all try to take on the spider creature, but in vain. He doesn't stand a chance against the creature, and the episode ends on an ominous note with Xavier revealing that the spider must be found before Apocalypse is released. Later, in the episode titled Self-Possessed, Rogue morphs into Sabretooth and causes massive violence and confusion after being out into the crowd. After Jamie fails to control her, Scott blasts this rogue-turned Sabretooth into a wall and buries her under a pile of rubble. She then transforms into Juggernaut, and the saga with her multiple personality disorder continues throughout the episode. In another episode called Dark Horizon, Rogue is mind-controlled by Mesmero and is made to absorb every mutant power of the X-Men. Sabretooth attacks her after he takes down Colossus, but Rogue doesn't take much time to knock him out using some of Colossus's powers. The episode comes to a point where Logan is asked to follow Rogue and Magneto orders Sabretooth and Gambit to help him out in this mission. Reluctantly, the arch-rivals work together briefly, almost ending up fighting each other. They track down the vehicle Rogue was using, and finally, in Dark Horizon 2, they fight as a unified force. Sabretooth, Wolverine, and Gambit are all knocked down by a powerful psychic attack by Mesmero, but Charles uses the mental block to save them. Later, they try attacking Mesmero one more time, but their efforts are warded off. Finally, when Mesmero is busy pinning down Wolverine, Sabretooth uses the opportunity to knock him out, breaks Rogue out of a hypnosis state. The Dark Horizon story arc is a memorable moment because you wouldn't find too many instances of Sabretooth and Wolverine fighting together on the same side. Wolverine and the X-Men. Sabretooth appears briefly in this animated series. He's a member of Weapon X, where Wolverine used to work alongside him until he quit. He parted ways because he couldn't bring himself to harm the innocent and ended up attacking Sabretooth. One of the most memorable appearances is in the episode Stolen Lives, where Mystique and Wolverine have to deal with Sabretooth when they head to Weapon X headquarters to rescue Maverick's daughter. They emerge victorious in the fight and manage to blow up the Weapon X base before leaving.
It's Sabretooth, and it's payback time, Furball!
Ultimate Spider-Man. Sabretooth can be seen in the episode titled Freaky, where Mesmero uses his mutant powers to alter Spider-Man and Wolverine. Their bodies are altered, and Wolverine is now in Peter Parker's body while Spider-Man is in Wolverine's. Sabretooth storms into Logan's apartment without the knowledge that Peter is now in his body. During the fight with Sabretooth, Peter accidentally stabs himself in the chest, and while he tries to escape, he's hit by a bus. Later, Sabretooth tracks him down and discovers the secret of their body switch, but Wolverine in Peter's body manages to kick him under a bus. Together, they knock him out. Finally, they confront Mesmero to fix their bizarre condition. The Superhero Squad Show. Here, Sabretooth is a dangerous and powerful mutant who functions as a member of the Lethal Legion group founded by Dr. Doom. The episode, Enter Dormammu, explores how the Superhero Squad is attacked by Sabretooth and Juggernaut, and how the intense fighting changes the nature of Superhero City. Eventually, they seek assistance from Doctor Strange, who opens a portal to the Dark Dimensions, and Dormammu manages to enter. He also appears briefly among the villains in the episode A Brat Walks Among Us, and Sabretooth is next seen in Stranger from a Savage Land. This episode starts with a Sabretooth tiger brought to Superhero City from the Savage Lands. It's soon revealed that the creature named Zabu is in the companion of a mysterious jungle lord, Kazar, and the Superhero Squad helps him in rescuing Zabu. Meanwhile, Dr. Doom sends in the likes of Sabretooth alongside other villains to seal Zabu for his evil purposes. The clash between the two forces heats up. Sabretooth's last appearance in this animated series came in the episode Election of Evil, where the mayor's re-election runs into trouble, and all the heroes and villains might against the mind-controlling Egghead's sneaky tactics. We have to say that apart from X-Men the Animated Series and X-Men Evolution, the other animated shows failed to utilize Sabretooth to his maximum potential. He's much more than just a mindless, brutish villain, but most of the later shows brought him out in bits and pieces, mostly to engage briefly with Wolverine or the other superheroes in question. Did the live-action movies fare any better with the utilization of Sabretooth? Let's find out in the following segment. Sabretooth's appearance in the cinematic universe explored. When the live-action adaptation of X-Men finally happened, it was evident that someone like Sabretooth would find a role in the narrative, and the makers didn't disappoint. Although he first appears in the X-Men movie back in 2000, the events in the movie X-Men Origins Wolverine is chronologically ahead. It serves as a prequel to the earlier movie. It's unfortunate that Sabretooth didn't find mention in some of the other prominent films in the franchise, but we hope all that's going to change very soon with his appearance in the upcoming Deadpool 3 movie. In this segment, let's quickly take you through the narrative as shown in Sabretooth's two major movie appearances. X-Men Origins Wolverine 2009. While this movie is the fourth in the X-Men film series, it marks the first installment of the Wolverine trilogy. Besides tracing the origins of Wolverine, the narrative also explores the origins of Sabretooth and establishes a strange connection between the two. The story starts off back in the year 1845, when a young boy named James Howlett experiences his mutant powers for the first time while he watches his father being killed by a man named Thomas Logan. James's anxiety causes his mutations to be activated. He has bone claws emerging from his knuckles, which he uses to impale Thomas. However, just before dying, he reveals that he's actually the biological father of James. Following this traumatic experience, James escapes with Thomas Logan's other son, Victor Creed, who happens to be his half-brother. Even Victor has somewhat similar mutant abilities along with similar healing powers as James, and together the two brothers work as soldiers for the next century. They take part in the American Civil War, the two World Wars, and finally the Vietnam War during the 70s. Over time, Victor has become increasingly violent. It finally shows in his actions during the Vietnam War. One day, attempts to force himself on a Vietnamese woman, kills his superior officer when he tries to stop him. James is oblivious of what actually transpired, and he immediately rushes to help his brother, which leads to both of them being sentenced to execution by the firing squad. Due to their remarkable healing abilities, they can't be killed by ordinary means. Finally, they're jailed in a special cell. This is when William Stryker reaches out to them and offers them a way out of prison if they agree to join his special team, Team X, which is a group of powerful mutants. They agree and join the likes of Wade Wilson, Agent Zero, John Wraith, Chris Bradley, and Fred Dukes. James participates in a few missions using the alias Logan, but he's soon disappointed by the lack of empathy among the mutants in the team. He detests their increasingly violent ways and abandons the group and his brother in search of a peaceful life. After 6 years, Logan is shown leading a normal life as a logger in Canada, living with his girlfriend Kayla Silverfox. At this time, Major Stryker and Agent Zero approach him with concerns that someone's targeting members of the team, and Wade Wilson and Chris Bradley have already been killed. They seek Logan's assistance, but he refuses to rejoin the group. However, his quest for a peaceful life changes very quickly when he finds out that Victor has killed Kayla. When he confronts his long-lost half-brother after tracking him down at a bar, Logan is defeated convincingly in a duel with him. Later, Stryker reveals that Victor has gone rogue, and Logan undergoes a painful surgery where his skeleton is reinforced with adamantium to have a better chance against Victor. But he soon learns about a conspiracy after overhearing Stryker talking about how he wants to erase Logan's memory so that he can be used as a deadly weapon weapon without a conscience. Logan escapes, but Agent Zero follows him into his hiding, where a confrontation gets the latter killed. Logan promises to kill both Stryker and Victor to get his revenge, and he seeks out two of his former colleagues, Fred and John, in Las Vegas. Fred Dukes tells him all about how Victor and Stryker are working together to hunt down mutants and experiment on them at Stryker's secret laboratory on an island. A mutant named Gambit has managed to escape from the lab and is the only one who knows its exact location. John Wraith and Logan find Gambit in New Orleans, but they're attacked by Victor, who kills John and extracts his DNA. Gambit agrees to help Logan in freeing the captured mutants on the island and takes him to the secret location. Meanwhile, Stryker refuses to give the adamantium bonding to Victor and claims that the surgery could be fatal for him. He also activates his new creation, a deadlier version of Wade called Weapon XI, which is infused with multiple mutant powers. Logan and Victor finally fight together one more time to take down Weapon XI, and even the captive mutants are freed. However, Logan loses his memory after being knocked down by an adamantium bullet, and he no longer remembers his past life. The movie ends with the revelation that Weapon XI is still alive. Victor and his current intentions are not revealed clearly. X-Men 2000. This movie marks a rather limited appearance of Sabretooth, but if you take the events of the 2009 Wolverine movie into account, it all adds up. The first X-Men live-action adaptation sees Sabretooth as a crucial member of the evil Brotherhood of Mutants. He serves as the right-hand man for Magneto. His feral nature makes him growl at everyone. He tries to kill Wolverine, but Cyclops and Storm step in to help. There's a memorable fight sequence where Sabretooth and Wolverine fight on top of the Statue of Liberty before the combined powers of Cyclops and Jean Grey blast Sabretooth through the statue and fall through a security boat. He does survive the fall, but there hasn't been another appearance of Sabretooth in the movies apart from the 2009 prequel film. In X-Men 2000, Sabretooth seems to have no memory of his past connections with Wolverine, and it can be due to the fact that his feral nature has grown over the years to take away the slightest trace of humanistic traits in him. Tyler Mane played the role of Sabretooth in this movie, but even though he did a fine job, Liev Schreiber was recast in the role for 2009's X-Men Origins Wolverine. The change was made because Liev Schreiber had a resemblance to the Wolverine actor Hugh Jackman, important for the context as they were established as half-brothers in the 2009 movie. Sabretooth almost appear in Logan 2017. Although we haven't seen Sabretooth on screen since X-Men Origins Wolverine, the character almost made a comeback in Logan. Schreiber was all set to reprise the role. His performance in the 2009 movie had been praised by fans and critics alike, and he later revealed that he'd received an early invitation from Hugh Jackman to continue as Sabretooth. The director of Logan, James Mangold, wanted to create a situation where Wolverine and his group would seek Sabretooth's help while being on the run, but the idea was eventually dropped. It's also worth noting that Sabretooth appeared in the animated movie Hulk vs. 2009 in a brief role, where he's pitted against Wolverine and tries to kill him slowly. Now, Deadpool 3 is all set to bring back Sabretooth into the cinematic universe, and there are strong rumors suggesting that Liev Schreiber will return to play the role. A perfect superhero requires a worthy supervillain for the stories to prosper, and it goes beyond saying that Sabretooth is the perfect antagonist for someone like Wolverine. Do let us know in the comments below what you think of this mighty villain and which version of Sabretooth is the most impressive. Don't forget to tell us which other X-Men character you find intriguing so that we can bring you a similar detailed version of that character.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.